Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 7. The Supreme Lord is equal to everyone. Chapter 1, text 36. Shri Narada Vacha Ekada Brahmanak Putra Vishnu Lokam Yadrichaya Sananda Nadayo Jagmus Charanto Bhuvana Trayam Shri Narada Vacha Ekada Brahmanak Putra Vishnu Lokam Yadrichaya Sananda Nadayo Jagmus Charanto Bhuvana Trayam Narada Vacha Kada Brahmana Putra Vishnu Lokam Yadrichaya Sananda Nandayo Jagmus Charantam Bhuvana Trayam Ovacha Ladies. Ruvacha Dharadhamra Putra Vishnu Lokam Yadrichaya Shri Narada Vacha Shri Narada Muni said, Ekada, once upon a time, Brahmana of Lord Brahma, Putra, the sons, Vishnu of Lord Vishnu, Lokam, the planet, Yadrichaya, by chance, Sanandana, Adaya, Sanandana and the others, Jagmu went, Charantam, traveling about, Bhuvana Trayam, the three worlds. Translation, no purport. The great sage Narada said, once upon a time, when the four sons of Lord Brahma, named Sanaka, Sanandana, Sanatana, and Sunat Kumara, were wandering throughout the three worlds, they came by chance to Vishnu Loka. So there's no purport, I just like to say, this word Yadrichaya generally means by its own accord, not exactly by chance. It's not that they flipped a coin and they got heads and they wound up in Vaikuntha. Obviously, you just don't wander into Vishnu Loka. But by their own accord, they were seekers. Brahman realized, but they were seeking, so they came upon Yadricha Lavashantus To, one who's satisfied by gain which comes of its own accord. Or there's another verse in the Bhagavatam, Yadricha, which is analyzed by Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, and chance is not one of the definitions he gives, by its own accord. So text 37, although the four great sages were older than Brahma's other sons like Marichi, they appear like small naked children, only 5 or 6 years old. When Jaya and Vijay saw them trying to enter Vaikuntha Loka, these two gatekeepers, thinking them ordinary children, forbade them to enter. Purport: in this regard, Srila Madhvacharya says in his Tantra Sara, and I think we can safely skip over the Sanskrit, just read the translation. The purport is that the personal associates of Lord Vishnu in Vaikuntha Loka are always liberated souls. Even if sometimes cursed or blessed, they are always liberated and never contaminated by the material modes of nature. Before their liberation to Vaikuntha, they possess material bodies. Once they come to Vaikuntha, they no longer have them. Therefore, even if the associates of Lord Vishnu sometimes descend as if cursed, they are always liberated. Apparently, Jaya and Vijaya, according to this, were previously in the material world, and they got liberated and became the associates of Lord Vishnu in Vishnu Loka. And once they became associates of Lord Vishnu in Vishnu Loka, then they couldn't descend again. Mamupetya punarjanma dukalyam shastatam napnuvanti mahatmana samsiddhim paramam gataha. After attaining me, the great souls who are yogis in devotion never return to this material world because they have attained the highest, this temporary miserable world, because they have attained the highest destination. So obviously, if you get a spiritual body, someone comes along and curses you, the curse is not going to be very effective. Curses are for material bodies. So their descent into the material world was an arrangement by Lord Narayan, by Lord Vishnu. So it can't be an ordinary birth if Lord Vishnu personally wants you to come to the material world. But it's interesting how Prabhupada seems to indicate that before they were liberated in Vaikuntha, they had material bodies previously, and once they got to Vaikuntha, they couldn't descend again. And therefore, the previous verse is consistent with that no one falls from Vaikuntha. Once you come to Vaikuntha, you don't go back to the material world. But obviously not everyone started out in Vaikuntha, according to this, because no one falls from Vaikuntha. Although sometimes Lord Vishnu, Lord Krishna, for instance, his associates come to help to assist him in his pastimes. But when they come, they can be considered to be conditioned souls. They're nitya siddhas. Any questions about that? I guess it's not a hot topic anymore in ISKCON. It's a more important topic, hotter topics. Previously the devotees practically killed themselves over. They probably send themselves back to Godhead over this subject. Yes.
Hare Krishna. My question is, Hare Krishna. In Jaiva Dharma also, it's a very frequent question, how a pure jiva goes into ignorance. In the Bhagavatam we have it like 3 or 4 times. In Jaiva Dharma, the Vaishnava Das Maharaj asks this question from his guru, and guru tells him, you go chant. And he gives him some explanation, but also he says, you go chant, your consciousness becomes purified, then you will understand. He goes, and after 2-3 days, or some days, he comes back and he says, thank you, I understand. So my question is, what would be the level where these things stop being just some abstract theoretical point or important didactic point that yes, it's our mistake, we did fall due to our mistake, and it becomes a realization of, or actually realize understanding of what is happening and how it is happening? What would be the stage of advancement where these things could be understood properly?
I have no idea. Prabhupada, in the Bhagavad Gita, Prabhupada says, don't even bother talking about these topics. Those achintya, kalu, those things which are inconceivable, don't even bother trying to get into. Otherwise, Prabhupada would say, when you get to the stage of a sakti, then everything... No, he didn't say anything. He said, don't even bother getting into it. When you understand it, you'll understand it. But it's not essential philosophy that we have to understand to make spiritual progress. It's the type of philosophy which is called absurd inquiries. It's not absurd, but because it doesn't really have any meaning, any base, it doesn't really influence whether or not we make spiritual advancement or not. It's not something that we dwell on excessively. Just like trying to understand what it's like to have a spiritual body. We are a spiritual body, so it should be an obvious question. But right now we're covered by a material consciousness. Therefore we don't know, and we won't find out until we actually get back our spiritual body, what it's like to have a spiritual body. Then at that time, obviously at that time you understand. Once we get a spiritual body, then we understand. But whether we understand before that, I mean, if it only took him 3 days, well, it seems to have taken us a little bit longer. He must have chanted quite well. Anything else about this? Anyhow, it's not interesting, though, that the philosophy, yes.
Why are you concluding, Maharaj, that according to this part of Bhagavatam, Jain Vijay had material bodies before?
It says here.
I mean, not...
I'm just reading what it says.
Know that everybody does not start off from Vaikuntha. Why are you concluding this, actually?
Well, it says before the liberation to Vaikuntha, they possess material bodies. But once they come to Vaikuntha, they no longer have them. And that's what Prabhupada says in the purport. And Prabhupada said before that, in another purport, that no one falls from Vaikuntha. So if no one falls from Vaikuntha, then anyone who's in Vaikuntha doesn't fall down. Now, the other thing is that we're never separated from Krishna, because Krishna is always with us. Therefore, in one sense, everyone is Krishna conscious, as it says in the Atmarama verse, in the explanation. Everyone is Krishna conscious, even the dull people, even everything that is consciousness, to one degree or another, is conscious of Krishna. So we're eternally conscious of Krishna to some degree. But the question is whether we were always ever fully conscious of Krishna. Now, if we were fully conscious of Krishna, we don't have to be in Vaikuntha to fall down from that consciousness of Krishna. Because actually to be conscious of Krishna is the same thing as being in the spiritual world. So these things are not, as far as I can see, these acharyas don't give such a simple answer, and perhaps there's more than one answer. As I said, when the Nityasiddha devotees come here, they apparently come and take material bodies, but they're not material bodies, they're spiritual bodies, spiritualized bodies. And therefore, although they appear to be in the material world, but actually when they join Krishna, they join Krishna in their spiritual bodies. Their so-called material bodies are no impediment for their devotional service. So the only difference is we're in a material body, but due to our attachment, therefore our material bodies, they more or less impede our devotion to Krishna, our consciousness of Krishna. That's the only thing. That's material world simply means lack of Krishna consciousness. And as soon as we're Krishna conscious, then we're in the spiritual world. We're in the spiritual world, but we're thinking we're somewhere else, so that's called Maya. So actually no one can ever be outside of the spiritual world because there's nothing but the spiritual world. How can you be outside the spiritual world? We only think we're outside the spiritual world. Thus, checked by the doorkeeper as Jai and Vijay, Sanandana and the other great sages very angrily cursed them. You two foolish doorkeepers, they said, being agitated by the material qualities of passion and ignorance, you're unfit to live at the shelter of Madhudvisa's lotus feet, which are free from such modes. It would be better for you to go immediately to the material world, take your birth in a family of most sinful asuras. So obviously this is arranged by Krishna. I mean, the gatekeepers are just doing their service. So we'll find out there's much more behind this than just some little boys coming and getting stopped from going to Vaikuntha. I mean, they didn't have a ticket into Vaikuntha. They didn't have a passport. They didn't give prior notice. Hello, Jai and Vijay, we're coming, please let us in. They just happened to appear, and they stopped them. I mean, people have done worse. I mean, it's not the type of thing you would expect that, excuse me, can you, we're the gatekeepers, can you show us your pass to Vaikuntha? Sorry. No, we'll find out there's much more to the whole thing. But it's a pastime, because without this pastime, then we wouldn't have the three births of Hiranyakashipu, of Jai and Vijay. At least in this millennium, this round of yugas, Jai and Vijay were actually devotees. But Prabhupada says in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, in the purport, then other millenniums, other Mahayugas, sometimes Jai and Vijay are actually, Hiranyakashipu and Hiranyaksha are actually demons. So this is Krishna knows that this is the time for Hiranyakashipu and Hiranyaksha to appear, and let them become devotees and I can fight with them. That we can have some entertainment. Or as Prabhupada said, Krishna does that just to keep his, he does a little exercise just to keep his body fit. Because Krishna doesn't have to keep his body fit, it's always quite fit. Doesn't get any stronger. In any case, without these pastimes, we'd have nothing to read about. So luckily, Krishna enacts these pastimes, and Jai and Vijay sometimes participate just so that we can have a Bhagavatam, and if we get enthusiastic enough, we can sell them and get enough Lakshmi for the prasadam, the bhoga offered to the deities. So in that way, they bless us with their pastimes. While Jai and Vijay, thus cursed by the sages, were falling to the material world, they were addressed as follows by the same sages who were very kind to them. First they curse them, then they say, "O doorkeepers, after 3 births, you will be able to return to your positions in Vaikuntha, for then the duration of the curse will have ended." Just to give an idea, Hiranyakashipu appeared in Satya Yuga, and in the successive yugas, up to Dwarpa Yuga, when he became Shishupal, or even Jagai Madhai, which is only 500 years ago. So from the beginning of Satya Yuga to the present age is approximately 4,300,000 years. And that's just a very short period of time for Vaikuntha. It's not even a moment. For us, it's an inconceivable amount of time, but for Jai and Vijay, it was nothing. They're already back home. Thus, these two associates of the Lord, Jai and Vijay, later descended to the material world, taking birth as 2 sons of Diti, Hiranyakashipu being the elder, and Hiranyaksha the younger. They were very much respected by the Daityas and the Danavas, demoniac species. Appearing as Nrsingadev, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Shri Hari killed Hiranyakashipu. Then the Lord delivered the planet Earth, which had fallen in the Garbhodak ocean. Hiranyaksha tried to hinder him, and then the Lord as Varaha killed Hiranyaksha. Just as a point of information, the Earth, when it describes the Earth, is actually Bhumandala, not this tiny Bharatvarsha that we're situated on. It's actually the entire Bhumandala, which is worthwhile to pick up from the Garbhodak ocean. This little tiny planet wouldn't have much value. But to speak of putting it on the tusks of Lord Varaha, who's said to be half the size of the universe, I mean, it'd be like he'd be picking up an atom. But Bhumandala is much more significant. Desiring to kill his son, Prahlad, who was a great devotee of the Lord Vishnu, Hiranyakashipu tortured him in many ways. The Lord, the supersoul of all living entities, is sober, peaceful, and equal to everyone. Since the great devotee Prahlad was protected by the Lord's potency, Hiranyakashipu was unable to kill him in spite of endeavoring to do so in various ways. Purport. In this verse, the word Sarva Bhutatma, Bhutam, is very significant. Ishvara Sarva Bhutanam Rideshe Arjuna Tishtite. The Lord is equally situated in the core of everyone's heart. Thus he cannot be envious of anyone or friendly to anyone. For him, everyone is the same. Although he is sometimes seen to punish someone, this is exactly like a father is punishing his child for the child's welfare. Supreme Lord's punishment is also a manifestation of the Lord's equality. Therefore, the Lord is described as prasantam sama darshanam. Although the Lord has to execute his will properly, he's equally poised in all circumstances. He's equally disposed toward everyone. This is significant so we can understand what it means that Krishna is always one. He appears in many forms, as Ramadi Murtishu, Kalanime Tishtan, Nanavataram, Akaroti Vishnu. That Krishna appears as many different incarnations, and yet he's said to be one. From our point of view, sometimes he appears to be many, in the sense that how can Hiranyakashipu, how could Lord Nrsingadev be the same as Krishna? In other words, Krishna is a cowherd boy, and sometimes he's being chastised by Mother Jasoda. She's trying to bind him with a rope, and Krishna is crying. Now, how does that fit in with Lord Nrsingadev? He puts a demon half the size of the universe. Well, in Lord Varaha, he kicks a demon in the head and cracks his skull. The demon is half the size of the universe. How does this fit in with the little baby crying on the lap of Mother Jasoda? Well, it does fit in. And then sometimes we may think, well, it was Krishna's just playing. He's pretending. He's afraid of Mother Jasoda. Because after all, Hiranyakashipu, when he raised his eyebrows, the demigods were afraid. And here Krishna is killing this big demon with a little stroke of his fingernails. So how could he be afraid of Mother Jasoda? He just has to manifest some fingernails, Mother Jasoda. It's all right, I'll bind you tomorrow. No, Krishna always has the same mood in all his incarnations. It's just displayed differently, that's all. In other words, Krishna is always equal to his servants, but he does what's appropriate to his servants to help them make spiritual advancement. So sometimes that might mean he takes the form of Lord Nrsingadev and kills the material body. Of course, the soul can't be killed, but he wakes the sleeping soul up so that the soul realizes that it's not a good idea to forget Krishna, and what to speak of trying to fight against Krishna. It's a bad idea. It's a bad dream. And similarly, in all these other incarnations, whether it be Lord Ramachandra or Varaha or Parasuram, that Krishna, well, of course, Parasuram's is Saktavesh avatar, but the plenary expansions of Krishna, especially Vamanadev, they always have the same ecstatic mood, but they're just displayed according to the time, place, and especially the audience, to help the audience become Krishna conscious. The same desire is there to bring people back to the spiritual world, because that's Krishna's desire, and Krishna's energy, headed by Srimati Radharani, are always making the arrangements so that will happen, or at least progress can be made towards that direction. And Krishna is appearing appropriately, and his energies are manifesting pastimes in order to help the conditioned souls go back, or at least make progress towards going back to the spiritual world again. And in that way, Krishna displays different moods, apparently, but he always has the same mood. The mood is always, whatever mood he's displaying, the mood is to encourage, inspire, educate the soul to wake up and go back to the spiritual world. So Krishna has endless varieties he can manifest, and even in the spiritual world, he manifests unlimited varieties, but they're all meant to encourage the devotion of the soul. Whether the soul is in the material world or in the spiritual world, Krishna is always trying to encourage the soul to increase his devotional consciousness and ultimately his devotional service to Krishna. Therefore, no one can criticize Krishna and any of his activities because they're always for the benefit of the soul. Krishna does everything to help the souls make spiritual progress. And we look at it from that point of view, whether Krishna is on the battlefield with Pundraka and he cuts off his head and the head of Kasiraj, that's the benediction he's giving them. Although it appears from the outside not a very nice one, but that's what you get when you try to imitate Krishna. Matter of fact, that's what everyone gets. Sometimes you get it personally from Krishna, the Sudarshan chakra, and sometimes the Sudarshan chakra in the form of time cuts our head off anyhow. So everyone gets the same treatment. Pundraka, simply he got a special treatment because he was actually always thinking about Krishna. If he was just an ordinary demon dressed up as Vishnu, he wouldn't have gotten that benediction. But because he was so serious about becoming Vishnu, he not only was dressed like Vishnu, but he also was always thinking about Krishna, and therefore he got such a benediction. So that's one of the things here, is if you're going to imitate Krishna, at least think about Krishna. Don't think about some rock star or something like that. Think about Krishna. If you want to be an imitator and live in the material world in imitation, at least imitate the original person rather than some substitute. And then you'll get real benediction rather than some 100th class benediction, becoming a movie star or a dog in your next lifetime. Better to find out who's actually worthy of imitation and then try and imitate. Obviously, if you try to imitate Superman, you'll get into trouble. If you jump off a roof, see if you can fly. And there is no such thing as, there may be some kind of model, archetype, for instance, those who are in the Janaloka, Siddhaloka, Tapaloka, they, by nature, especially in Siddhaloka, by birth they can fly. They have all mystic powers, which put Superman to shame. So if you're going to imitate someone, then imitate the yogis who are trying to go to Siddhaloka, and maybe if you become qualified, you'll actually get such a body which is more powerful than any imaginary superhero nowadays. But then you'll be in Siddhaloka, where everyone else has the same powers too. So it's not very impressive. You're born like that. How come you can fly? Well, I was born like that. You don't have to go to flight school for 10 years and learn how to know. You just normally know how to fly. But everyone can fly there, therefore. There's no airplanes. If there are, it's just so you can take a rest. So I'll stop there. Thank you. Any questions, comments? Yes.
It may be too simple a question. I just wonder, how did it happen that the Kumaras, four Kumaras, stayed looking so young?
How do they do it? Well, if you get mystic powers, you'll learn the secret. Otherwise, I can't tell you unless you get mystic powers. I mean, what the level of all mystic powers come from identification with Krishna, according to the 11th canto of the Bhagavatam. The more our minds are dovetailed with Krishna's mind, the more our intelligence is dovetailed with Krishna's mind, then Didami Buddhi Yogam Tam, Krishna gives the intelligence how to do it. But he hasn't given me the intelligence. I don't think anyone who's gotten the intelligence here. It's not very common intelligence in Kali Yuga. But he even gives it to the demons sometimes. They can change their shapes because they become qualified by tapasya to get that intelligence, how to do it. But I don't know how to do it. Do you know how to do it? Yes.
Hare Krishna. Regarding the, you mentioned that Hiranyaksha and Hiranyakashipu appeared in Satya Yuga.
Yes.
Within this Divya Yuga.
Yes.
But we also hear, I believe in Laghu Bhagavatamrita, that Ramayana was happening in 22nd of Divya Yuga, of this Manvantara.
Yeah, there's many Ramayans.
So Ravana and Kumbhakarna as a Jai Vijay are from...
Well, that's what it says in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, quoting from the Laghu Bhagavatamrita. Because otherwise, how do we get in this Chaitanya Leela? Then we have Jai and Vijay. And we also have Shishupal and Dantavakra appearing when Krishna appeared. So that would logically put Hiranyakashipu and Hiranyaksha and Ramachandra and Kumbhakarna within our Divya Yuga. Otherwise, it would have wait on the sidelines. Would be a lot, it would be a wait. But Ramachandra, he also, he appeared. I think he's a Leela avatar. So exactly how it fits into the time schedule, or which exactly, the Ramayana that Valmiki recites, which one that is, I have no idea. So it all fits together, but I don't know how it fits together. But it's a fact that Jagai Madai appeared within Chaitanya Leela, and Dantavakra and Kumbhakarna, and Sri Shupal appeared within Krishna Leela, and that's all within our Divya Leela, within our Yuga cycle.
But the appearance of Varahadev is not from this Divya Yuga, right? Varahadev.
Varahadev, many incarnations of Varahadev. There's a white one, there's the
red one.
The red one is he makes his appearance quite often. There's some of our incarnations, they're coming regularly. They stop by regularly. So I can't fit it all together. The Bhagavatam doesn't emphasize timelines very much. They emphasize principles. Time doesn't really, because time is not really linear, it's cyclical. So in Western world, because we don't believe in God, we don't believe in we don't know how to know the creation, how it's cyclical. They take everything as linear. In the beginning there was nothing, and then everything appeared, and it's all progressing towards hell. Went from bad to worse. But we have a cyclical understanding of history, and therefore it's meaningless, because it keeps on repeating, punak punas charvidam charvananam. It's like you don't have a history of about summer, because summer comes cyclically. You don't really care, what happened in this, because it was, say, for instance, you pick flowers in a summer. So people don't really care which summer, because every summer you can pick flowers. Anything else? Thank you very much. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai, Gaur Premanande.